What was your "I'm surrounded by idiots" moment? My stupid teacher said that gravity is here because of air pressure. Now I want to hear his explanation on what stops the atmosphere from floating off into space. Air pressure. You need to pay attention in class. When I was in high school and someone asked me how you get green paint, I said you mix blue plus yellow, and it makes green. Literally everyone argued with me, yelling, and called me stupid. I immediately lost all faith in humanity. Couple of young girls at the staff canteen said to the lady serving sausage barms, "So what animal is used for sausages? Is there an animal called a sausage?" Serving lady, "I don't know." I didn't know who I hated or felt sorry for the most. In her defense, "I don't know" was a perfectly reasonable answer to the question, "What animal is used in these sausages?" At a monthly meeting for all the department heads and supervisors, the GM went around the room and said, "Does anyone have any ideas how we can make a good impression on the new regional boss who would be visiting?" Nobody said a word. I figured, hell, I knew this person from working together at the previous property. I suggested something that he always harped on. 2 hours later I was called into my boss' office and told I could no longer attend these meetings. Later on that night a few of the upper management took me out for drinks and told me that it is expected to not offer any suggestions when the GM asks for suggestions. Put in my 2 weeks shortly after. It still pisses me off to this day. I had a friend who never locked her door. She thought if they were locked and somebody would break in she couldn't escape. She lived on first floor. She needs one of them fancy doors with the lock on the inside so she could let herself out of her own apartment. Every day I go to work in my local leisure center. The heat and humidity are draining enough, but it really gets you when parents come in with 2 children that can't swim and leave one of them alone. "Sir, ma'am, you need to stay with both of your children, they can't swim." "Oh, okay. I'm sure they'll be fine." Child starts getting into difficulty without the parents seeing. Maybe she's just tired of the whole parenting gig. One coworker told her boss's boss to come down to her office if he wanted something from her. One coworker got a slice of bread jammed in the toaster and poked it with a fork. Our security guard accidentally shredded his paycheck. One coworker terminated her apartment lease and had a removal company standing in the hallway without having a new apartment lined up. My sister-in-law had no clue why her 50 kilograms of surplus weight would contribute to her breaking her ankle while walking down some stairs. All in one day. I took the next day off. When I was a very young kid, I used to purposefully touch the heating elements of the toaster with a metal knife because it sparked, and I thought it was cool. Luckily, I think it had an insulated handle. Darwin is sad now. Working in retail. I sell phones while I'm on commissions, and sales are what pay my bills. 90% of my job is helping people do things with their phones that they could have figured out on their own with a Google search that would have taken 3 minutes. Or next to no time at all if they would have just read their damn screen and did what it fucking said. No, I can't just change your Apple password. Yes, you have to call Samsung about your warranty. They really don't have a reason to speak to me. You aren't hearing your ringtone because you turned the volume all the way down. I wish I was exaggerating, but anyone else who works in a cell phone store can relate. When I was the only person in the class who knew that you do just turn a computer on, and you need to turn the monitor on as well. I had a teacher with a dual monitor set up in class. One was hooked up to our class projector, but he wanted to switch those screens around so the other was hooked up to the projector. A classmate stands up, walks over, says, "Okay, so lift them over each other and swap places," and that's what he did. He didn't think about also switching cables because he thought swapping their places would suffice. I damn near died laughing. In a grade 8 social studies class, when I told my teacher the Great Wall of China could not be seen from space, and she said, "When were you in space?" and everyone laughed at me. But when was she in space? Got in a heated debate whether plants would exist without humans because we water them. Everyone thought plants would die without humans. Me and one other person were the only ones that thought otherwise. I want to know, have they ever seen rain? I used to volunteer at an animal shelter as a teenager. I volunteered regularly and was basically there whenever I didn't have school, but most of the younger volunteers are only there for a few weeks in the summer because their parents make them go. There was one summer I was training some of the younger volunteers on how to care for the cats, and how to properly clean their areas and whatnot. They usually work up front with the healthy cats that are up for adoption, but that day I was told to take them to the back and show them how to take care of the cats there. The back is where they hold the sick cats, strays, and kittens and moms in the nursery. Obviously, they weren't ready for most of the cats there, so their job was to learn how to care for the healthy kittens. Now, every kennel in the back is clearly labeled right on front on whether they're sick or a stray, if the cat is aggressive, whether or not it's been vaccinated, what medications it needs, all of that stuff. So of course that's the very first thing I teach them, to be aware of the labels and to come to me if there are any cats they're afraid to work with or any labels they don't understand. So like 20 minutes pass and I'm busy mixing one of the stray's food with its meds when from the nursery I hear, "What does feral mean? Who cares, I want to pet it. Open it up." I rush in just as this juvenile cat screams and lashes out, trying to scratch them. Of course, none of them had gotten rabies vaccines, but luckily they'd all jumped back in time to avoid getting scratched or bitten. I had to close the kennel and drape a towel over the door to help it calm down. I couldn't believe I had to explain what the word feral meant to a bunch of high schoolers, and scold them for not following the rules and trying to play with aggressive, unvaccinated strays. None of them came back to volunteer. My physics teacher said you could theoretically drop a coin from a space station through a hole in the Earth and then pick it up on the other side because they have the same period. I pointed out that the coin would need to lose all of its velocity, otherwise it'll just orbit in weightlessness. Teacher couldn't comprehend this and was sure it would just drop to Earth. He believed astronauts had to be tethered when they left the station to avoid falling to Earth, rather than to stop them floating away. Our university has a student council of elected student members. Before going there, I believed those were the best and brightest of all students. Boy, was I wrong. It was basically just a shit show of people hurling insults along ideological lines, basically liberal versus socialist versus conservative versus green versus etc., and getting nothing done, despite having a budget of around $120K. So I work at a doctor's office. Our office is always getting in trouble because we have the lowest rates of physicals booked, despite being the biggest office within the system. We also have had a huge problem with follow-ups not being booked, etc. So one day, at a meeting with all of the front-end workers, the boss made a comment about how we need to be checking patients out properly. One person, who has been there 9 years sitting at checkout, goes, "How do you check out a patient?" Now, this wasn't a clarification question such as, "What would you like us to do differently?" Oh no. This woman meant exactly what she asked. She didn't know there was a checkout button, or how to schedule a follow-up. She's been there 9 years. She sits at checkout. I don't get it. Anyway, so the other checkout women during this conversation told her that there is a checkout button but doesn't know how to tell if they need a follow-up. She's worked here 2 years. When you click the button to check out, it says, on a full separate page, that you have to acknowledge in order to complete the checkout process. Come back in 1 year for physical, needs follow-up 6 weeks, etc. I looked at my manager in complete agreeance, and I banged my head on the table. This isn't the checkout people's fault. Someone should be supervising them. If management hasn't noticed in 9 years and didn't figure it out until the checkout people outed themselves as clueless, that's entirely on management. They were probably all trained by someone who said, "Oh, that screen just pops up. You can just skip it, we always do." This type of shit is why management consultants get paid so much. When I was starting my second year in high school, in my geography class we were put into groups and asked to find certain countries. We were to find Brazil, and the other 4 people in my group insisted that the entirety of Africa was Brazil. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.